Now, if you've been keeping up with your Kustopia lore, you know that I love me some indie games. Not only is one of my favorite video games of all time indie, but it's because of indie games that my channel really started to take off. It's also helped me figure out what I wanted to do with my channel as a whole. There's just something so compelling about seeing a small team or even a single person work hard to create something they love. Because of all the creativity I was seeing around me, I wanted to use my channel to not only try and be creative, but to also help promote and support creators, whether it be in art, game design, and other forms of media. I owe a lot of my success to these games, which is why when I was emailed by a small indie dev team to play and review their first ever game, I happily jumped at the chance. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna be talking about Lotus Lost Memories. It's a story game set in feudal Japan, where you play as a young samurai known as Atsushi. He's tasked by his dying father to travel to Kyoto and partake in the Grand Tournament, as the victor would be given the Raiketsu herb, the only cure to his father's illness. Now, to get the general review out of the way, I have to say, I liked it. It was a good game and a solid 7 out of 10. Not bad at all for an indie team's first ever game. I'll get into detail about the story and characters later, but for my positives, the story's really interesting, there were characters I enjoyed a lot, the pixel art looks really nice, there were some pretty awesome enemies, and the strategy turn-based combat was fun. I also liked how the game had this grainy filter, giving it this old samurai movie aesthetic. While the game's list of positives is decently long, I also have a list of pretty substantial negatives. For one, besides the turn-based combat and minigames, you really don't do anything else but watch the story unfold. You can't move around, there's no dialogue choices, there are some lines in the game that I feel like are a bit clunky, and what especially annoyed me was the fact that you don't have any control over the dialogue's progression. Normally in story games, dialogue appears on screen and stays there until you click to progress it, letting players read and comprehend what's going on at their own pace. With Lotus Lost Memories, however, if you don't read a piece of dialogue fast enough, then it's gone. You can pause the game to give yourself more time to read, but I feel like that's pretty inconvenient. It's like if you had the word story game, but story is really big, and the game's just this little tiny thing right next to it. The game also suffers from its extremely short runtime. I'll go into details about that later, but there are moments in the story that I feel like would be a lot more impactful if the game had a longer runtime. And last of all, the game has a pretty big amount of bugs. If you pause and unpause during certain moments in the game, the characters would end up frozen with no dialogue progressing. Sometimes the play button doesn't work, and there were some pretty big bugs during combat encounters as well. There's even a big moment at the end of the game that was spoiled prematurely because the devs didn't hide the name of a certain character. Now, despite all the negatives I just listed, I really did like this game, I swear. But to get into what I really liked about this game, I'll have to go into story spoilers. Even if you are gonna stick around for story spoilers, I recommend you all go buy Lotus Lost Memories on Steam and try it for yourself. It's only $5, and if you like story games, I'm sure you'll have a good time with it. And no matter what criticisms I have, I enjoyed the game and the developers have a lot of potential. Alright, without further ado, let's get into Lotus Lost Memories. As the story begins, the very first thing we see is our main protagonist Atsushi training, preparing himself for his journey to Kyoto and enrollment in the Grand Tournament. As Atsushi trains hard, he's being observed by his instructor Omasu, and we learn right away that Atsushi is the last remaining of 3 brothers, with Osamu praising him for his drive to move forward despite everything that happened in the past. Despite his praise, Osamu also chastises Atsushi for his stubbornness, at how blunt and straightforward he is about achieving what appears to be a nigh impossible goal, challenging him to a sparring match to prove himself ready. While it is annoying that the dialogue continues forward automatically, I like how specific words are colored and animated. It makes reading and understanding the dialogue a lot easier. Anyways, we're then introduced to the combat system of this game, and although it is a little clunky, it's honestly pretty cool. Attacks not only have different ranges and stamina costs, but each attack has a different % chance of actually hitting, with quicker, weaker attacks that cost less stamina being easier to land than more elaborate strikes. You can also press shift to use a kunai, which can be used to deal a decent bit of damage and even cancel an enemy's turn if they're hit mid-swing, but you only get a few per fight. When it's your opponent's turn to attack, you can press right click to raise your sword and block their strikes. with each enemy having a certain movement they perform right before they swing their weapon. Every enemy has unique attacks that they use in combat. My personal favorite is the guy who uses a monkey to throw banana peels on the ground, and then he whips out 2 guns and shoots you. Anyways, after proving himself to his teacher, Osamu tells Atsushi that he's been trying to take on his responsibilities alone for far too long, and asks that once his sons Daisuke and Satoyo find him, that Atsushi will let them stand by his side. Now, this is the first instance where I feel like the dialogue is a bit clunky. I don't think Osamu needed to specify that Daisuke and Satoyo were his sons, or that Atsushi used to train with them. It just seems like a quick way to establish certain characters to the audience, but that quickness comes at the cost of the dialogue becoming kinda clunky and unnatural. We meet those two later on, and through their conversations with Atsushi, we as an audience can put together their relationship. As an excuse to bring up my favorite game of all time, Until Then does this really well with Mark's first interactions with his best friends Kathy and Rydell. While they do bring up the fact that they're best friends, it's done in a very natural way. I feel like all Osamu needed to say was that his sons have not been idle, and then ask Atsushi to let them stand by his side. I just feel like that'd be a lot more natural, with Atsushi's relationship with them not needing to be said because we see it later on. Anyways, before Atsushi heads out on his journey to Kyoto, we meet his father, Lord Hiranori. He expresses to his son how important getting this herb is, telling him that without it, the land will continue to wither and die. He even makes a point of telling Atsushi how he's inferior to his younger brother Makoto. He tells Atsushi that with his brother gone, his burdens were now his own, ordering him to escort some peasants to the next village over as he makes his way to Kyoto. Through his conversation with his father, we can understand Atsushi's stubbornness and determination to get this herb. Not only is Atsushi using this mission as a way of proving himself to his father, but he's also using it as a way of carrying the burden of one of the brothers he's lost. Not only that, but he also has the burden of his entire nation to deal with as well, because without that herb, the populace would plunge into chaos. Even on the way to the village, the peasants question Atsushi's worth as their protector, bringing up how a nobleman like himself hasn't had to struggle like they did. So to put it short, Atsushi carries his brother's legacy, his father's approval, and the safety of his nation's people with him as he travels to Kyoto. Before Atsushi heads out, he's accompanied by a foreigner named Etienne, who seems to work for his father. And let me just say, as a man who's part Japanese and a big fan of samurai, this French dude is my favorite character in the entire game. Etienne, in a way, serves as the anti-Atsushi. He makes jokes, he seems a lot more carefree, and when they talk about what duty means to them in their respective countries, their homelands directly contrast each other. Etienne tells Atsushi that in Japan, duty is sturdy and as unbreakable as iron, but with no room to change and grow, saying how a man stays in the same position or role his entire life. While where he's from, duty is more like paper, being able to change and adjust quickly and freely at the cost of blood and money. While Atsushi stubbornly carries his burdens and duty as he pushes forward through life, Etienne runs from his own. Hell, even their weapons are complete opposites. Atsushi fights with a katana, a weapon primarily made for slashing and cutting, while Etienne wields a rapier, a weapon made for thrusting and stabbing. And as the two talk about their lives by the fire, they discover that their camp is being stalked by bandits. As Atsushi confronts the bandit leader, the leader mocks him for leaving the peasants alone at camp, with them making their presence known as a way of leading him away from the people he's supposed to protect. And also, I want to point out how it's kind of funny that every single character in this game just drops hard-ass one-liners. Like, I don't think bandit leader of all characters needed to say this. Like, imagine going up to a homeless person and they go, "The slow-moving fist always meets its mark," right before they stab you and take your money. Hell, they make a joke about it later in the story. Anyways, after Atsushi defeats the bandits and heads back to camp, the group that was meant to ambush the peasants while Atsushi was away was easily taken care of by Etienne. This moment serves as the first time in the game that Atsushi's stance on pushing forward alone begins to change, because without Etienne there, those villagers would have been slaughtered and he would have failed his father. It showed Atsushi firsthand that with capable companions by his side, the road ahead might be easier. As Atsushi and Etienne reach the peasants' village, they part ways. And it's at this village that Atsushi hears just how bad the common folk have it under Lord Hiranori's rule. During Atsushi and Etienne's journey, we could see ruined carts and rubble in the background, subtly showing at how bad things are getting for the commoners. And the bandits who attack them are seen wielding sickles, meaning that these attackers could very well be peasants who turned to banditry to survive. But at the village, he's directly confronted by a drunken man named Kanji, who insults Atsushi, telling him that a noble has no idea about the struggles common folk had to endure under his father's rule, challenging him to a fight. And after Atsushi beats him, Kanji tells him how they forced him to leave his family to help build the levee to prevent their homes from flooding, only for him to come home to find his family slaughtered. Now, I'm not sure if they is in reference to his fellow villagers or the upper class, but after seeing Atsushi's determination to get the herb, it inspires Kanji to join the tournament as well, believing that maybe fighting could help bring some meaning to his life. After that brief fight, Atsushi is stopped by Osamu's sons, Daisuke and Satoyo, along with a girl named Fumie, who is actually my second favorite character. And no, she's not my favorite just because she's the one who points out that everyone's basically just a random quote generator. After a practice duel with Daisuke, the four begin talking. Fumie tells the group about her dream of becoming a writer, not only wanting to document tales of heroism and adventure, but to live through them as well. She complains about how her father refuses to let her leave the village due to his fear after her mother's death, with the others telling her how dangerous the world is and how it isn't kind to dreamers. Fumie asks Atsushi why he's always so focused on what's ahead instead of what's right in front of him, which causes Atsushi to open up to the group about his brothers. He talks about how amazing both he and his father thought his younger brother Makoto was, but after he was kidnapped, his father became colder, and after his older brother Zentaro came back from a mission he went on with their father, he ended up leaving as well. Atsushi tells his friends that despite remembering Makoto, his memories of Zentaro are fragmented, with him remembering less and less each day. Atsushi then says that the reason he's always looking ahead is because if he tries to live in the present, he'll just be reminded of everything he's lost. In return for his confessions, Fumie opens up about how she too was having trouble remembering the mother she lost, and how she could hardly remember the songs her mother used to sing her. And after a bit more back and forth, the group goes to sleep. Man, this was a very good scene. It gives a lot more context on Atsushi's stoicism and stubbornness to keep pushing forward, afraid that by stopping for just a moment, he'll be reminded of everything that he's lost. Atsushi's finally around a group of people he can relax around, banter with, and open up to. And as Atsushi, Daisuke, and Satoyo say goodbye to Fumie and travel to Kyoto, I'm sure they'll have plenty of wholesome... Oh. Honestly, despite Daisuke and Satoyo's deaths surprising me, I wasn't really too sad about them. Yeah, an abrupt, quick death with no drama is realistic, but this is where I feel like the game's short runtime is really detrimental to the narrative. Because we as an audience haven't grown attached to these characters yet. We've basically just met them and had one good scene. If I had maybe an hour or two more with Daisuke and Satoyo, I would feel a bit emotional. But with what we were given, I was like, well, they're dead. That sucks. But while their deaths aren't really emotional, I did feel pretty bad for Atsushi. After losing his brothers, he was so focused on keeping his guard up at all times as to not get himself hurt again. And the second he began to lower them and relax, two more of his friends were killed in an instant. After taking care of the assassins that killed Daisuke and Satoyo, Atsushi runs into a mysterious old man by the name of Kenshi. After Atsushi tells him what happened and the guilt he feels for letting his friends die, Kenshi tells him that he himself has lost his family, his home, and everything he's ever held dear to him. He tells Atsushi that in his current state of grief and anger, he couldn't get himself seriously hurt. He compares Atsushi's mind and emotions to fire, saying how when controlled, it can be a useful and crucial tool for improvement. But if it's left unchecked or uncontrolled, it could destroy and burn everything around it. Kenshi then begins to help Atsushi train his mind to control the fire inside him. As Atsushi tries to control his emotions, he can't help but think back to Daisuke and Satoyo's deaths, blaming himself for letting his guard down, thinking back to everything he could have done differently. After hearing this, Kenshi shows him a small lotus in a pool of water. He explains to Atsushi that under the beautiful lotus is dark, disgusting mud, and despite the mud trying to pull it down, the lotus continues to bloom on the surface, using the disgusting dark things below in order to help it grow. Kenshi says that Atsushi is a lot like a lotus, with his grief and anger acting as his roots, and in that moment, Atsushi's being tangled and caught in the mud, with it slowly pulling him below. But by learning to channel his emotions and calm himself, he can begin to bloom. After a bit of training, Atsushi begins to calm down, controlling his emotions enough to the point where he's able to defeat several assassins without much issue. The way the Lotus is implemented in the story is honestly really creative, and its connections with how to handle your emotions and grief are really interesting. To be a Lotus means to go through that muddy water we all have in our lives, so that one day we could bloom into something beautiful. But despite Atsushi's training, he still thinks about the people he's lost. And with the deaths of Daisuke and Satoyo, that burden he needs to carry has gotten worse. He tells Kenshi about how he feels like everything he's doing is just a way for him to try and chase after the brothers he's lost. Which is honestly what makes Atsushi so compelling. He was wedged between his strong and loyal older brother and his prodigy of a younger brother, and now that he's the only one left, he needs to live up to those expectations. He quite literally has ultimate middle child syndrome. Kenshi tells Atsushi that in order to honor the memories of the people he's lost, he needs to finish what they started and to carry them forward. He's not chasing after them, he's trying to reach the point where their deaths have meaning. By obtaining this herb and saving his father, he'd know that his friends and family's deaths weren't in vain. As Atsushi begins to rest, Kenshi tells him that the dead can't save him. That burden was his alone to carry. Once Atsushi arrives in Kyoto, he surprisingly reunites with Fumie, with him telling her the unfortunate news of what happened to their friends. After going through a few kinda buggy preliminary tests, Atsushi is enrolled in the final matches of the tournament, taking the stage name White Lotus as a way of honoring what Kenshi taught him. For his first match, he fights Kanji, the drunkard he defeated back at the village, under the stage name Wildfire, with him choosing that name to symbolize the burning passion inside of him to continue forward down a new path in life. Kanji thanks Atsushi for beating him before, saying that he acted as the first spark that lit his path. Despite Kanji's appreciation, Atsushi dismisses his thanks, telling him that it was his own choice to make, and that he had nothing to do with it. After their fight and Atsushi's victory, Fumie asks Atsushi why he didn't say anything after Kanji thanked him, with Atsushi telling her that although Kanji was able to use this tournament as a way of finding himself, he was at this tournament for a different reason. He tells Fumie what Kenshi said, about making his brothers and his friends' deaths mean something, with the herb being the physical manifestation of that proof. He focuses solely on his end goal because to him, if he can't get that herb, then none of what happened would have even mattered, and the death of his friends would have been for nothing. But despite what Atsushi believes, even if he doesn't obtain the herb, his journey wouldn't have been for nothing. He found a good friend in Fumie and even helped change a person's life. But he can't see the good in those things because of what he sees at the finish line. In the next round, Atsushi faces off against a warrior by the name of Mei. A cold, quiet spearwoman who didn't even bother giving herself a stage name like every other competitor. In a way, she was quite similar to Atsushi himself. After a long, drawn-out duel, Atsushi defeats her, with Mei pointing out that although he used his anger and aggression to win, that anger wasn't going to carry him much further. Despite her words, Atsushi dismisses them, telling Mei that even if his anger wasn't gonna last, it got him one step closer to his goal. At this point, we really begin to notice how Atsushi's mental fortitude is beginning to crack. Anger was slowly seeping into the way he fights, and when Fumie tells him that he should be celebrating his win instead of continuing to train, he tells her that what's done is done and now he has to focus on preparing for the next match. He even dismisses learning about his next opponent because to him, that doesn't matter. He knows he's gonna win and be one step closer to the herb. Fumie tries to tell Atsushi that there's more to life than just the next fight. She tells him to stop and take a look at the beauty of the tournament, the journey he's gone on and the people he's met. Life isn't just about pushing forward, and it's okay if you want to stop and enjoy yourself. But despite her words, he tells her that all he can worry about is the future. He expresses his fear about telling Master Osamu about what happened to his sons, about how he'll react and what he'll say, saying how life isn't all sunshine and rainbows. After hearing this, Fumie opens up to Atsushi about the night her mother died. She was killed while trying to protect Fumie from bandits, fighting like hell to give her daughter the chance to escape. She tells Atsushi how her father tried to keep her locked away from the outside world in fear of her getting hurt. But what kind of life would that be? She tells Atsushi that she didn't want to live the rest of her life in fear, being tied to this memory of her mom. Fumie's mother died saving her life, and in order to truly honor her memory, she needed to go out and live it. While Atsushi pushes forward because he feels it necessary, Fumie pushes forward to experience the joys that life has to bring. She knows it's hard. She knows that there's struggle, but in the end, she'll honor her mother's life by not wasting her own. She tells Atsushi that he might not know how to tell Master Osamu about his son's deaths, but they'll do it together. Atsushi assures her that by getting the herb, he'll finally be happy, to which Fumie tells him that she hopes he will be. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why Fumie is one of my favorite characters in the game. And I'll get more into her message later, but anyways, as the next fight begins, Atsushi is both shocked and outraged to see that his next opponent was none other than Etienne. He calls out his former French friend for lying about his motivations, how he said nothing about entering the tournament and standing against him. Etienne calls him a fool for not seeing the things that lurk below, and with that, the two begin to duel. Now you might be wondering, why was Atsushi so angry at Etienne for entering the tournament and not Kanji? After all, both were standing against him. Well, it's all in the intentions of both men. Kanji was using the tournament as a way of trying to find his purpose, which was something Atsushi respected. Etienne, on the other hand, was known by Atsushi to be carefree and arrogant, with their previous chat about what duty means to each other making him believe Etienne joined this tournament just for fun. To Atsushi, he wasn't joining the tournament to achieve a goal or to grow as a person. He was doing it to enjoy himself. And as the two battle, those previously mentioned contrasts between Atsushi and Etienne are even more present. Etienne is introduced before the match as an untethered man, while Atsushi is trapped under the weight of honoring the friends and family he's lost. Atsushi fights with anger while Etienne fights with grace, and after defeating him, Atsushi angrily tells him that he lost. Despite losing, Etienne tells Atsushi that he's right where he needs to be, which must anger Atsushi, as if it was him who lost, losing the tournament would have been the end of the world to him. But despite losing, Etienne didn't even seem bothered. He venomously tells Etienne that he hopes this little game he's playing in his head gives him the purpose that he doesn't have, to which Etienne tells him that despite the two of them both playing the same game, someone already set up the board a long time ago, before walking off. After the fight, Atsushi's rage reached a boiling point, with him desperately trying to use the meditation techniques Kenshi taught him to try and calm down, but to no avail. Enraged by Etienne's playful and carefree attitude, Atsushi stops meditating and begins to take his anger out on the training dummy. He angrily questions about what Etienne's reasons for joining the tournament could be. He had no idea what it was like to be desperate or to struggle, losing his temper as he begins to beat the dummy senseless. What's more, those questions about what Etienne could possibly know about struggle and hardship were the same things that the common folk said about Atsushi himself. Fumie tries to tell Atsushi that despite Etienne's reasons being different from his own, that doesn't mean his reasons for joining were invalid, to which Atsushi tells her that she has no idea what it's like, with his words finally causing Fumie to snap, telling Atsushi how she opened up to him about her mother, but he just wouldn't listen. She tried to tell him how hard it was for her and why she chose to start living her life, but her words fell on deaf ears. She tells Atsushi that just because he's hurting, that doesn't make him superior to everyone else. Everybody has their own reasons for why they fight, questioning if this journey was truly about saving his father. She pleads with him to tell her how he was really feeling, with Atsushi telling her how angry he was. No matter how many times he fights and wins, his heart won't stop hurting. He tells her that he has no idea what to do, that all he knows is that he has to keep moving forward. After hearing this, Fumie turns away, telling Atsushi that she can no longer bear to listen to him anymore, before leaving. And during his next match, Fumie is no longer watching in the stands. Atsushi faces off against a pirate by the name of Kazuo, a ruthless, honorless man who fights for nobody but himself. He is the definition of what it means to be free, everything that Atsushi is not. As Kazuo enters the arena, he taunts Atsushi for being spineless, revealing that he was listening in on Atsushi and Fumie's conversation before. He begins to insult Atsushi's father and the damage he caused to his land, calling Atsushi himself nothing more than a scared boy with no idea what direction he's going. And in a sad way, Kazuo's kinda right. Atsushi is essentially trudging endlessly forward, because that's all he believes he can do. At the end of the day, Atsushi never once questioned the direction he was going and what was gonna come of it. Because of the ghosts of his past haunting him, he'll stay by his father's side as a loyal hound forever, continuing to serve him without question. Because of all the losses weighing down on him, he's had no time to truly think about the path he wants to take. Kazuo's words struck home, with Atsushi angrily drawing his sword. The two would engage in a fierce battle that involved banana peels and several guns, but in the end, for the first time in the tournament, Atsushi kills his opponent. And after the match, Atsushi sits alone in his tent, not even bothering to train, looking back at where Fumie used to stand and watch him, preparing himself for his final match. As Atsushi faces off against the champion of the arena, he tells the champion that he's just another body in the way of the herb, with his opponent telling him that he'll never allow the herb to fall into Lord Hironori's hands, telling Atsushi that he deserves nothing. Atsushi tries to tell the champion that the herb will bring new life to the land, with his words being shot down as the champion tells Atsushi that he doesn't give a damn about the land or the people. All he cares about is his grudge against Hironori, how the Lord stole his life and now he was gonna steal his. After hearing this, Atsushi tells the champion that despite how flawed his father is, he doesn't give a damn anymore. He's no longer fighting for his father, he's fighting for himself. How he's gonna prove himself to the people close to him by winning this tournament once and for all. For his friends, his people, and most of all, his brothers. That's when the champion reveals that he's none other than Atsushi's older brother Zentaro. A twist that was prematurely spoiled because the developers forgot to hide his name. Atsushi is in disbelief, telling his brother that Hironori told him that he was dead, asking him why he never came home. Zentaro tells Atsushi that it was all because of their father, telling him that Hironori has been keeping things from him, letting him walk down a path blindfolded and unaware of what's happening around him. As Atsushi realizes the man he's given his undying loyalty to might be evil, he realizes that his entire journey might have been for nothing, causing him to go crazy, angrily yelling at his brother that they need to fight and finish this tournament, and once he wins, he'll finally be able to truly move forward, away from the burden he has to carry because of his brothers and friends. He has nothing left to lose, so he was gonna stop at nothing to win. As he declares his choice, flaming arrows begin to rain from the sky as the arena is lit ablaze, with it being revealed that Lord Hironori never trusted Atsushi to obtain the herb in the first place, with him sending his men to invade Kyoto to take the herb by force. Zentaro tells Atsushi that he was never meant to be the heir of Hironori, that he was nothing more than a tool. Atsushi tells Zentaro that he's wrong and to move aside, with the flames around them being symbolic of what Kenshi told Atsushi in the forest about fire. Being able to control fire is a useful tool, but if you can't, you'll end up hurting everyone around you. The fire surrounding Atsushi and his brother represents Atsushi's overwhelming emotions. He's no longer thinking with logic or reason. He just wants that herb and he'll stop at nothing to get it. As the two brothers duel, Zentaro fights Atsushi with chains, a weapon symbolic of his life. Zentaro was previously known as the most loyal of the three brothers, and followed Hironori's orders as best as he could. But after realizing the kind of man he was, Zentaro fled, desiring revenge against his father for whatever he did. Zentaro was quite literally using the chains his father had around his loyalty as a weapon. As Atsushi eventually knocks Zentaro to the ground, the elder brother begs him not to bring the herb to Hironori, that it won't fix anything. And right before Atsushi could respond, Kenshi appears and tells him about how everything that happened was all part of Hironori's plan. That because of the attack, the herb went missing. And with the herb gone, Atsushi's chance at peace has gone missing as well. Kenshi tells Atsushi that his father was never truly gonna fix the problems with the country. He was gonna profit off them, and that if Atsushi really did care about his clan and his people, he'd come with him. And after realizing Zentaro has fled, Atsushi chooses to follow Kenshi. And as the two ride away from the capital, we finally see who truly took the herb. In the end, the man without burden was the one who got the herb. And what we saw at the start of the game, it's very likely Etienne will deliver the herb to Lord Hironori. But all hope isn't lost. Atsushi is still alive and kicking. And maybe he'll finally put a stop to his father. So, that was Lotus Lost Memories. The more I write this script, the more I realize that I'm invested in this story, and I really want to see it get a continuation. I'm just saying, I'd love to see my favorite carefree Frenchman again. But now it's time for me to talk about what I took away from this game. What was the lasting message that impacted me? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I believe Lotus Lost Memories gives us a very important lesson not just about handling grief, but how to approach our lives. When it comes to our grief and our burdens that come with it, We need to understand that there's nothing we can do to truly make that grief go away forever. We can try and tell ourselves that all we need to do is this one certain thing or achieve this one certain goal, and then the pain we'll feel inside will finally get better. No matter what, grief will always find its way back to us as people. Like a lotus, it's rooted into us. To grieve is to be human, and much like a lotus, we can't let ourselves be pulled all the way into the mud. We can't stay submerged in it forever. One day or another, we'll have to come to the surface and bloom. While we do push forward every single day, we need to understand that it's okay to relax. It's okay to take a break and enjoy what's around you. While it's important to look at what's ahead, be sure to cherish things in the now. I have to admit, although I do love making YouTube videos, it's hard for me to just stop and enjoy what I've made. After I finish a video, it's always, alright, what's next? I need to learn that it's okay sometimes to just stop and relax from time to time. Everybody's got goals they want to achieve, but don't let the sight of those goals stop you from appreciating what you have now. And after making this kahuna of a video, I might just go outside and finish Berserk or something, who knows. All I do know is that although it's hard sometimes, I really do love life, and I want to find as much joy as I can from it. So thank you Lotus Lost Memories for a great experience, and I'll see you all in the next video.